The screaming starts before anyone expects it. Sarah Martinez, a 20-year veteran flight attendant with pristine hair and a permanently pinched expression, towers over a 16-year-old black girl in seat 3A. Her voice carries through the cabin like a whip crack, each word dripping with barely concealed disgust. "Young lady, I don't know what kind of behavior you think is acceptable, but this is not your living room." Sarah's manicured finger points accusingly at the teenager, who sits perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. The girl's calm demeanor only seems to fuel Sarah's rage further. Passengers crane their necks, phones already emerging from pockets. Some look uncomfortable, others angry, but everyone senses they're witnessing something that will have consequences far beyond this flight from Atlanta to New York. The teenager, Zoe, meets Sarah's glare with steady brown eyes that hold something unsettling. Not defiance exactly, but a quiet confidence that doesn't belong on someone so young facing such public humiliation. She reaches for her phone with deliberate slowness, and for just a moment, Sarah catches a glimpse of the caller ID. Dad, Washington, D.C. But the flight attendant doesn't know she's just made the biggest mistake of her career. 40 minutes earlier, Zoe Williams boards the aircraft with the quiet efficiency of someone who has been traveling frequently since childhood. She moves through the jetway with purpose, her government-issued ID badge briefly visible on a lanyard before disappearing into her jacket pocket. She's dressed simply but thoughtfully. A navy hoodie from Georgetown University, well-fitted dark jeans, and white leather sneakers that have seen better days but clearly came from an expensive store originally. Her backpack appears standard college prep gear, nothing particularly flashy except for the monogrammed leather portfolio tucked under her arm and the sleek carbon fiber laptop case slung across her shoulder. Both items carry the subtle markers of serious money, understated but unmistakably high quality. She presents her boarding pass to Sarah with a polite smile and direct eye contact. Business class, seat 3A, purchased at full price just 8 hours earlier. Sarah's eyes narrow as she examines the ticket with unusual scrutiny. Then Zoe, then the ticket again. The inspection lasts far longer than necessary, and Zoe notices. She always notices. It's a skill developed through years of accompanying her father to political events where every interaction carries potential significance. "This seat is 3A?" Sarah asks, though the answer is clearly printed on the pass in bold numbers. "Yes, ma'am." "And you're traveling alone today?" Zoe's eyebrows rise slightly at the unexpected question. "Yes, ma'am." Sarah's lips purse into a thin line. She's seen teenagers in business class before, usually accompanied by parents who look the part. Men wearing expensive watches and women carrying designer handbags, the subtle markers of generational wealth and inherited privilege. This girl, though, travels solo and looks like she could be heading to any public high school in America, despite the quality of her accessories. "Did someone purchase this ticket for you?" The question comes with a particular tone, one that suggests Zoe might not belong in this section of the aircraft. Zoe's phone buzzes insistently against her palm. The screen shows multiple missed calls, all from the same contact. Dad, Washington, D.C. The preview text reads, "Landed yet? Committee meeting moved to 4 p.m. Need you there for final testimony review." "My father did." Zoe answers simply, declining the call and settling into her assigned seat. She pulls out the leather-bound notebook. Expensive, the kind law students carry through 3 years of case law and constitutional theory, and begins writing in neat, precise handwriting that speaks to years of academic excellence. Sarah hovers nearby, ostensibly organizing the overhead bins, but actually watching as Zoe extracts what appears to be a government-issued tablet from her laptop case. The device briefly displays a Department of Transportation logo and the words "Official Use Only" before Zoe quickly closes the cover, but not quickly enough to escape Sarah's notice. In Sarah's mind, this looks like a teenager playing with some kind of government simulation game, probably downloaded from an educational website. She assumes it's homework, maybe a civics project about transportation policy. The possibility that it might be genuine never occurs to her. Teenagers don't have government clearance for DOT materials. 20 minutes into the boarding process, Sarah's behavior crystallizes into a clear pattern that Zoe recognizes from her extensive reading on implicit bias research. When the elderly white gentleman in 2B requests a pillow before takeoff, Sarah provides it immediately with a warm smile and asks if he needs anything else. When the young white woman in 4A asks for extra peanuts, Sarah laughs good-naturedly and brings an entire basket along with a selection of premium crackers. Zoe observes it all with the analytical eye of someone trained in systematic observation. Her pen moves steadily across the notebook pages, but she's not taking notes for school. She's documenting everything: exact times, specific quotes, witness positions, behavioral patterns. It's a skill she's developed from accompanying her father to oversight hearings, watching how congressional testimony gets prepared, how evidence gets preserved, how cases get built through careful accumulation of facts. Her phone buzzes again with another missed call from Dad, Washington, D.C. This time the text preview reads, "Transportation Committee needs your summer research when you land. How soon can you be here?" Zoe types back quickly with practiced efficiency. "Situation developing on flight. We'll call when clear to discuss." Sarah notices the typing, the official-looking correspondence flashing on the screen, the way Zoe handles complex scheduling with unusual sophistication for someone her age. Instead of recognizing these as signs she should tread carefully, Sarah interprets them as evidence of exactly the kind of entitled behavior that irritates her most about modern teenagers. In her mind, this is a young person who thinks expensive electronics and busy scheduling make her important. This is someone who needs to learn that respect for authority matters more than whatever privileges her family money has bought her. The plane pushes back from the gate right on schedule, and Sarah begins her pre-flight service with exaggerated attention to every passenger except Zoe. Her smile becomes brighter, her voice warmer, her service more attentive as she works through the cabin. When she reaches row 3, she pauses with barely concealed irritation. "Can I get you anything to drink?" The question sounds helpful to casual observers, but the tone suggests Zoe should decline and stop bothering the busy crew. "Water would be nice, please. No ice. I'll get to you when I get a chance." Sarah moves on immediately without the follow-up questions she asked other passengers. "Sparkling or still? Lime wedge? Anything else I can bring you?" 3 minutes later, she cheerfully provides sparkling water with lime to the white businessman across the aisle who boarded 10 minutes after Zoe and made the exact same request using nearly identical words. Zoe's pen keeps moving across the page, capturing the differential treatment with the precision of someone who understands that documented patterns matter more than individual incidents when building a case for systematic discrimination. The real trouble begins exactly 1 hour and 12 minutes into the flight, when Zoe has been quietly working for most of the journey, alternating between her leather notebook and the government tablet, occasionally checking her phone for updates from Washington. Her behavior throughout has been exemplary. No loud conversations, no excessive demands for service, No complaints about Sarah's increasingly obvious differential treatment. But Sarah has been watching with growing paranoia, building her case in her own mind with the systematic distortion of someone determined to justify predetermined conclusions. The teenager's calm confidence reads as arrogance. The expensive electronics seem inappropriate for someone so young. Most threatening of all, the way Zoe takes detailed notes on everything feels like surveillance, like she's gathering ammunition for some kind of coordinated attack on Sarah's career. The confrontation escalates when Zoe adjusts her seat back to rest, just 15 degrees from upright, well within normal parameters for passenger comfort. Sarah appears immediately, materializing beside row 3 with the speed of someone who has been waiting for an excuse. "Excuse me, we need all seats upright during meal service preparation." Zoe checks her watch automatically, a sleek smart watch that briefly displays several government email notifications before she covers the screen. No meal service is scheduled for another hour and 20 minutes, and she knows from extensive flying experience that seats can remain reclined until actual meal trays are distributed. She glances around the cabin, noting that at least 6 other passengers have their seats reclined to similar or greater degrees. "Of course," she says anyway, reaching for the seat adjustment controls without argument or attitude. No confrontation, no citing of airline regulations she clearly knows, no pointing out the inconsistent enforcement. Sarah's jaw tightens with frustration. She was expecting pushback, some kind of entitled response that would justify escalation. Zoe's immediate compliance somehow makes everything worse, not better. It denies Sarah the satisfaction of having her authority challenged and then triumphantly reasserted. The notebook continues to bother Sarah more than anything else. Throughout the flight, she catches glimpses of Zoe writing steadily, filling page after page with neat handwriting, and paranoia sets in with increasing intensity. In Sarah's mind, the girl is probably documenting every minor imperfection in service, planning to write scathing online reviews, maybe even threatening the airline with social media exposure. She's seen what viral posts can do to airline employees' careers. Companies throw individual workers under the bus at the first sign of negative publicity. During the main beverage service, Sarah approaches Zoe's row with a cart full of options and a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "What can I get you to drink today?" "Apple juice would be great, please." "We're out of apple juice." Sarah then serves apple juice from the same cart to the next 3 passengers who request it, including a 10-year-old child whose mother specifically asks for apple juice if you have any available. Zoe makes another careful note in her book, including the timestamp and the exact exchange. She also quietly activates her phone's voice recording application, a habit learned from watching her father prepare for Senate hearings where every word might be scrutinized later by hostile committee members or aggressive journalists. The tipping point arrives when Zoe receives a text message marked urgent that makes her phone buzz loudly in the quiet cabin. The message preview shows, "Committee vote moved up. Need your research summary immediately." Sarah appears within seconds, a professional mask finally slipping to reveal the hostility that has been building throughout the flight. "What exactly are you doing with that phone?" The question comes out sharp and accusatory. "I'm sorry? I was just reading a text message from my father's office." You've been on that device constantly throughout this flight, taking pictures, recording conversations, documenting everything like some kind of investigator. This constitutes harassment of airline staff, and I won't tolerate it anymore. Zoe's eyebrows rise in genuine surprise. She hasn't taken a single photograph or video during the entire flight. "I haven't taken any pictures or recordings. I've been reading messages and taking notes about my travel experience. Don't lie to me, young lady. I've been watching you document everything that happens on this aircraft, writing down every conversation, taking notes like you're gathering evidence for some kind of complaint or lawsuit. This is exactly the kind of entitled, manipulative behavior that your generation thinks you can get away with. The accusation hangs in the air like a challenge. Passengers throughout business class begin turning their heads, sensing that something significant is happening. Sarah's voice has risen to a level that carries throughout the cabin, and her body language, hands on hips, leaning forward aggressively, makes clear that this is no longer a routine service interaction. Zoe remained seated, her hands visible and empty except for her pen. I'm taking notes about my flight experience because I'm researching passenger service standards for an internship project. I'm not recording anything inappropriate or harassing anyone. That's exactly what someone would say if they were trying to cause trouble and destroy hard-working people's careers. I've seen this before, entitled passengers who think they can intimidate crew members by threatening to post negative content online, ruin reputations, get people fired for doing their jobs. Well, it won't work with me. Sarah's accusations grow more detailed and more divorced from reality with each sentence. She claims Zoe has been recording crew conversations without consent, taking unauthorized photographs of other passengers, behaving disruptively throughout the flight, and making threatening gestures. None of it is true, but Sarah has convinced herself through 2 hours of escalating paranoia that every word is justified. "I need to see that phone right now," Sarah demands, extending her hand with the authority of someone accustomed to having her commands obeyed without question. "I'm sorry, but you don't have the legal authority to search passengers' personal property without specific probable cause of criminal activity," Zoe responds. Her voice stays perfectly level, but there's something new in her tone, a precision that suggests deep familiarity with federal regulations and legal procedures. "Oh, I don't have authority? Let me tell you something about authority, young lady. You are on my aircraft, under my supervision, and I decide what behavior is acceptable in this cabin. And right now, your behavior is completely and totally unacceptable." The word unacceptable comes out with particular venom, loaded with implications that make several passengers audibly gasp. Zoe continues writing, her pen capturing every word, every witness, every detail that will matter later when this incident inevitably escalates beyond the aircraft. Sarah sees the continued note-taking as the ultimate provocation, proof of everything she's been saying about manipulation and harassment. Stop writing, stop documenting, stop trying to gather evidence to use against hard-working people. This is exactly the kind of disrespectful, entitled behavior that shows your generation thinks rules don't apply to them. Zoe looks up from a notebook, meeting Sarah's furious gaze with the steady calm of someone who has spent years watching political professionals handle hostile questioning. "I'm exercising my legal right to document my experience as a paying passenger. I'm not disrupting anyone else's flight, I'm not violating any federal aviation regulations, and I'm not threatening anyone's safety or employment." The careful, measured response, delivered with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what their rights are and exactly how far those rights extend, pushes Sarah completely over the edge. "That's it. You're moving to economy class right now." The announcement hits the cabin like a thunderclap that changes everything in an instant. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a disruptive passenger situation that requires immediate crew attention." Sarah's voice crackles through the intercom system with barely controlled anger, carrying her words to every seat on the aircraft and transforming a localized conflict into a public spectacle. Zoe doesn't move from her seat, doesn't gather her belongings, doesn't show any intention of complying with the order. She knows her rights as a passenger under federal aviation law, knows that being involuntarily moved from a paid seat requires specific documented violations of safety regulations or federal statutes. Taking notes doesn't qualify. Neither does receiving text messages, declining illegal searches, or politely asserting constitutional rights. "I'd like to speak to the captain or another senior crew member," Zoe says quietly, her voice carrying just far enough to be heard by nearby passengers who are now openly watching the confrontation with their phones ready. "I am the senior crew member on this aircraft, and I'm telling you to gather your personal items and move to the back of the plane immediately. Your behavior has been consistently disruptive, threatening, and inappropriate throughout this entire flight." Other passengers begin voicing objections with increasing boldness. The businessman directly across the aisle, a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit, speaks up first. "Excuse me, but I've been sitting right here for the entire flight. This young woman hasn't done anything disruptive at all. She's been quiet, polite, and well-behaved. You're the one who's been acting inappropriately." Sarah whirls on him with the fury of someone whose authority has been challenged by an unexpected alliance. "Sir, I need you to return to your own business immediately and stop interfering with crew operations. This passenger has been recording crew members without consent, taking unauthorized photographs, and behaving in a threatening manner designed to intimidate airline employees." "That's absolutely not true," interjects a woman from row 4, a well-dressed black professional who has been watching the entire exchange with growing outrage. "I've been observing this situation from the beginning, and she's been doing nothing but reading and writing quietly. You're the one who's been singling her out, treating her differently, and now making false accusations. This is discrimination, plain and simple." Sarah's face flushes bright red as she realizes that having multiple witnesses directly contradict her story makes everything exponentially worse, not better. In her mind, Zoe has somehow manipulated the entire cabin against her, turning innocent bystanders into allies through some kind of sophisticated psychological manipulation that proves how dangerous and calculating this teenager really is. "Everyone needs to return to their seats and mind their own business immediately, or you'll all be reported to airport security for interfering with crew duties and creating a safety hazard," Sarah announces. "The threat is legally meaningless. Passenger advocacy isn't a federal violation, but it reveals how completely Sarah has detached from reality and legal constraints." Zoe's phone buzzes insistently with another call from Dad, Washington, D.C. This time, after glancing around at the escalating situation and the growing number of passengers involved, she makes a calculated decision and answers. "Hi, Dad. I can't really talk right now. I'm dealing with a situation on the flight." The voice on the other end is warm and familiar, but carries unmistakable undertones of authority that suggest someone accustomed to wielding significant power. "Zoe, honey, what's wrong? You sound upset, and your location shows you're still airborne. What kind of situation?" "A crew member has been treating me differently throughout the flight, and now she's making false accusations and trying to force me to move from my assigned seat without valid justification." Sarah reaches for the phone with sudden desperation, realizing that outside communication represents a threat to her control of the narrative. "You cannot make personal calls during a crew emergency situation." Zoe pulls the phone away smoothly, protecting it with the practiced motion of someone who has watched political operatives handle hostile crowds. "Dad, I need to put you on speaker. This flight attendant is claiming I've been disruptive and threatening, but I have multiple witnesses who can confirm that's not true. Put it on speaker, honey. I want to hear exactly what's happening up there. Zoe hesitates for just a moment, understanding that this decision will change everything irreversibly, then complies. Senator Williams's voice fills the immediate area around Seat 3A with the commanding presence of someone who has spent decades addressing packed hearing rooms and hostile press conferences. This is Senator David Williams. Who am I speaking with? Sarah freezes completely, her hand still extended toward the phone she was trying to confiscate. The name sounds familiar in the way that important political figures' names do, but she's too far into her confrontation, too committed to her position, too blinded by anger and perceived disrespect to process the implications clearly. This is a private airline matter, sir. Passengers cannot make personal calls to interfere with crew authority during emergency situations. Ma'am, this is my daughter, and she's describing behavior that sounds like textbook discrimination based on racial bias. I'm going to need your full name, employee identification number, and supervisor's contact information immediately. The word daughter hits Sarah like a physical blow that makes her stagger backwards slightly. But pride and panic and 2 hours of escalating commitment make backing down impossible. Sir, I don't care who you claim to be. Your daughter has been consistently disruptive, disrespectful, and inappropriate, and she's being moved to economy class where her behavior might be more suitable to her background. The pause before background carries implications that make the entire cabin go completely silent. Everyone can hear Senator Williams' response, delivered with the controlled precision of someone who has spent years conducting high-stakes political negotiations. Ma'am, my daughter is one of the most well-behaved, intelligent, accomplished young people you will ever encounter. She's returning from a summer internship with the Department of Transportation, where she's been working directly on passenger rights legislation and aviation industry oversight. If you're discriminating against her based on her race, you're making a very serious mistake that will have consequences far beyond this flight. Sarah's world begins tilting off its axis as the implications start penetrating through her anger. But pride and panic combine to push her toward the point of no return. I don't care if she's the president's daughter. Bad behavior is bad behavior, and she's been nothing but trouble since she set foot on this aircraft. Zoe finally speaks directly to her father, her voice carrying clearly through the cabin. Dad, she's accused me of taking unauthorized photos, recording crew members, behaving threateningly, and harassing airline staff. None of those accusations are true. I have multiple witnesses, and I've been documenting the actual sequence of events in detail. Honey, are you physically safe right now? Yes, sir. I'm just being discriminated against, and now I'm being retaliated against for documenting it and asserting my passenger rights. Senator Williams's voice takes on the tone that Zoe recognizes from his most serious committee hearings. Controlled, measured, and absolutely implacable. Ma'am, you're currently violating several federal regulations regarding passenger treatment and civil rights. You're also potentially exposing your airline to significant federal investigation and enforcement action. I strongly suggest you contact your supervisor immediately and resolve this situation appropriately. Sarah makes her final, fatal mistake. The words that will be quoted in news articles and congressional hearings for months to come. Your threats don't scare me one bit. Rich parents who think they can buy their way out of consequences for their spoiled, entitled children. That's exactly what's wrong with this country. Your daughter is disruptive, she's been disrespectful to hard-working crew members, and she's moving to economy class right now, whether you like it or not. The phone line goes quiet for several long seconds. Then Senator Williams says, with the calm finality of someone pronouncing sentence, Zoe, keep documenting everything. I'm making some calls right now. Zoe ends the call and looks up at Sarah with something that might be pity mixed with professional interest. You should probably contact your supervisor immediately. The only person contacting anyone will be me. Contacting airport security to have you removed from this aircraft for making terrorist threats against crew members. But Sarah's hands are shaking visibly as she speaks, because the name David Williams is finally registering in her memory. Senator David Williams, chairman of the Senate Subcommittee on Aviation Safety and Consumer Protection. The man who literally oversees airline industry regulation, who controls the legislative framework that governs her employer's operating authority, who can shut down airlines with a single committee hearing. Zoe returns to her notebook calmly, writing faster now as she captures not just the original discrimination, but the retaliation, the false accusations of terrorism, the threats of false arrest. Every word is evidence of the systematic problems her summer research has been documenting, perfect illustrations of the policy gaps her internship work was designed to identify and address. Her phone starts buzzing constantly, texts, calls, emails pouring in from multiple sources. She glances at the preview messages without opening them. CNN aviation correspondent requesting immediate comment. Washington Post transportation desk needs statement. Senate Transportation Committee scheduling emergency oversight hearing. DOT Enforcement Division requesting incident details. Word is spreading through official channels with the speed that only government communications networks can achieve. Sarah notices the flood of media and official attention, and complete panic sets in. Stop calling reporters. Stop trying to destroy my career. Stop ruining my life. I haven't contacted any media outlets. Zoe responds truthfully, showing her call log to nearby passengers who can verify her statement. But other people are obviously concerned about what they're witnessing here. The captain's voice comes over the intercom with barely controlled tension. All flight attendants report to the galley immediately for emergency consultation. Sarah realizes that her supervisor has probably received multiple calls in the past 15 minutes from sources she can't ignore, deflect, or intimidate. She's about to face questions she can't answer, defend actions she can't justify, and explain behavior that has no explanation except the one she'll never admit to herself or anyone else. Zoe keeps writing steadily, documenting the final moments before everything changes forever. The captain emerges from the cockpit with the expression of someone who has just received very bad news from very important people who have the power to end careers instantly. Captain Rodriguez has been flying commercial aircraft for 23 years, worked his way up from regional carriers to major airlines, and he has never, not once, had a call from airline headquarters, the Department of Transportation, and a Senate office all within the same 10-minute span. Ms. Martinez, I need to speak with you in the galley immediately, he says, his voice tight with barely controlled panic and professional dread. Sarah approaches the galley area with false confidence that doesn't mask her trembling hands or the fear growing in her eyes. Captain, I have a serious disruptive passenger situation that requires immediate— The passenger in seat 3A is Senator David Williams' daughter. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow that makes her grab the galley counter for support. Senator David Williams, chairman of the Senate Subcommittee on Aviation Safety and Consumer Protection, the man who literally controls the regulatory framework that governs every aspect of their industry's operations. The man who can shut down airlines with a single oversight hearing, ground fleets with regulatory findings, destroy careers with subpoenas. That's impossible, Sarah whispers, her voice barely audible. She's just a teenager. She doesn't look like a senator's daughter. She can't be. Like what exactly? Captain Rodriguez asks, his voice deadly quiet with the tone of someone who understands exactly what Sarah almost said and exactly how much legal trouble that represents. Sarah can't finish the sentence because completing it would require admitting what she's been thinking throughout the entire flight. The quiet assumptions that have driven every interaction. The biases she's never acknowledged even to herself. I've just been informed by our CEO personally that Ms. Williams has been working this summer as a paid intern with the Department of Transportation's Office of Aviation Consumer Protection, specifically researching patterns of passenger discrimination complaints and enforcement gaps in civil rights protections. She's returning from a 3-day conference on aviation industry bias and consumer protection enforcement. Sarah's legs nearly give out as the full implications crash over her. The notebook, the careful documentation, the calm responses to escalating provocation, the familiarity with legal language and passenger rights. None of it was random. Zoe has been trained specifically for situations like this, educated in exactly the kinds of systematic discrimination that Sarah has been demonstrating. Furthermore, Captain Rodriguez continues relentlessly. I've been told that our entire conversation is being recorded for potential federal oversight purposes, and that depending on how we handle this situation in the next 10 minutes, it could determine whether our airline faces a Department of Transportation investigation, Senate subcommittee hearings, and possible federal enforcement action. Sarah looks toward seat 3A, where Zoe continues writing steadily, occasionally checking her phone for the constant stream of messages from Washington. The girl's demeanor makes perfect sense now. The confidence, the precise legal language, the familiarity with federal procedures, the complete lack of intimidation when facing authority figures. She's not just some entitled teenager with rich parents. She's the daughter of the most powerful aviation oversight official in the United States government, and she's been specifically trained to identify and document exactly the kind of behavior Sarah has been displaying. What? What do you want me to do? Sarah asks, though she already knows the answer will involve public humiliation and probable career destruction. You're going to return to seat 3A. You're going to apologize publicly, professionally, and sincerely for your inappropriate behavior. You're going to acknowledge that your treatment of Ms. Williams was unacceptable and discriminatory. And then you're going to pray that Senator Williams doesn't decide to make this airline a case study in systematic industry bias. Sarah returns to seat 3A on unsteady legs, her 20-year career flashing before her eyes. Zoe looks up from her notebook with polite, professional attention, as if nothing unusual has happened, as if she hasn't just destroyed someone's life with a single phone call. Ms. Williams, Sarah begins, her voice completely different now. Humble, careful, terrified. I want to apologize sincerely for my behavior during this flight. I was inappropriate, unprofessional, and completely out of line. I'm deeply sorry. Zoe sets down her pen and gives Sarah her complete attention. Thank you for the apology. Can you be specific about what you're apologizing for? I want to make sure we're both clear about what happened here. The question isn't cruel, but it's precise and thorough. Sarah realizes that Zoe is still gathering evidence, still building a complete record of what occurred and how it was resolved, still operating in her professional capacity as a researcher documenting aviation industry practices. I apologize for accusing you of taking unauthorized photos and recordings when you were simply taking notes for legitimate research. I apologize for claiming your behavior was disruptive when it clearly wasn't. I apologize for trying to move you from your assigned seat without proper justification under federal aviation regulations. and I apologize for treating you differently than other passengers based on assumptions I made about you." Zoe nods thoughtfully, processing the apology with the analytical approach of someone trained in policy evaluation. "Thank you. I accept your apology. Can you also apologize to the other passengers who witnessed this incident? They were subjected to a very uncomfortable situation because of accusations that weren't true." Sarah turns to address the business class cabin, where every passenger is watching with rapt attention and most are still recording. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize for the disruption and distress you witnessed today. My behavior was unprofessional and inappropriate. Ms. Williams did absolutely nothing wrong throughout this flight. I'm sorry you had to see that. Several passengers murmur acceptance, but the damage is already irreversible. Videos have been taken from multiple angles, stories have been shared on social media platforms, and posts are already going viral with hashtags that will trend for weeks." Zoe's phone buzzes with a text from her father. "How are they handling the situation now?" She types back quickly. "Professional apology after they realized who I am. But Dad, this isn't really about me. It's about every passenger who gets treated this way and doesn't have your phone number to call." Senator Williams responds immediately. "Exactly right. That's why we're going to make sure this becomes a teaching moment for the entire industry." Zoe looks up at Sarah, who is still standing nearby, clearly hoping this nightmare is over and she can somehow salvage her career. "Ms. Martinez, I want you to know that I don't plan to make this personal about you specifically, but I do plan to use this experience as part of broader advocacy for passengers who face discrimination and don't have the resources or connections to fight back effectively." Sarah nods numbly, not understanding that her career is already over, that the videos are already spreading, that by the time the plane lands her name will be attached to a national conversation about aviation industry bias. Zoe returns to her notebook, adding final details to what has become the most comprehensive real-time case study of aviation discrimination ever documented, complete with witness testimony, recorded evidence, and official responses. The plane continues toward New York, but everything has already changed forever. By the time Flight 247 touches down at LaGuardia Airport, Sarah Martinez's life, as she has known it for 20 years, is comprehensively over. She just doesn't fully understand the extent of the devastation yet. The first concrete sign comes when Captain Rodriguez receives another call from headquarters before they even reach the gate. This conversation is brief, decisive, and delivered with the kind of corporate efficiency that leaves no room for appeal. Martinez is suspended immediately, effective the moment that aircraft door opens. She doesn't work another flight until this investigation is complete, and frankly she probably never works another flight again. Sarah processes this information with the numb shock of someone watching their career implode in real time. 20 years of service, a previously spotless record, multiple commendations for customer service excellence, perfect attendance awards, all of it meaningless now because she chose the wrong passenger to discriminate against at the wrong moment in aviation industry history. As passengers deplane, several approach Zoe to express support and offer to serve as witnesses in any formal proceedings. They hand her business cards, personal contact information, LinkedIn profiles, validation that what she experienced was real and wrong and completely unacceptable. Zoe thanks each of them graciously, adding their details to her growing documentation file with the professionalism of someone who understands that witness testimony will be crucial for broader policy reform. But the real consequences are just beginning to cascade through multiple systems simultaneously. Within 6 hours of landing, the video footage taken by passengers has been viewed over 2 million times across various social media platforms. The hashtag "Would Zoe Williams" is trending nationally alongside airline discrimination and senator's daughter. News outlets are picking up the story with the speed that only comes when powerful political figures are involved. Aviation industry analysts are providing expert commentary, and civil rights organizations are issuing carefully crafted statements that place this incident in broader historical context. Sarah's full name becomes public by evening when someone identifies her from the videos, and her social media profiles are discovered and systematically scrutinized. Old posts that seemed harmless before now read as evidence of deeper bias and problematic attitudes. Comments about people who don't belong in first class and complaints about entitled passengers who think money makes them special take on sinister new meaning when viewed through the lens of documented discrimination. The airline's stock price drops 12% in after-hours trading as investors recognize the potential for federal investigation, regulatory action, and massive legal liability. By the next morning, Senator Williams has called a press conference that draws national media attention. Zoe stands beside him, poised and articulate, wearing a navy suit that makes her look older and more authoritative as he announces comprehensive new legislation that will strengthen passenger civil rights protections and create robust federal oversight mechanisms for airline discrimination complaints. My daughter's experience yesterday represents what happens to countless passengers every single day, passengers who don't have the resources, connections, or knowledge to fight back effectively, Senator Williams states, his voice carrying the moral authority of someone who has spent decades fighting for civil rights. We're going to change that permanently. Zoe speaks briefly, focusing not on personal grievance, but on systematic reform with the policy expertise she's developed through her internship. This incident illustrates exactly why we need better reporting mechanisms, stronger enforcement tools, and real consequences for discriminatory behavior. I was fortunate to have extensive documentation and family support. Every passenger deserves the same level of protection. The airline's CEO issues a statement announcing Sarah's immediate termination and promising comprehensive policy reviews. But the damage extends far beyond one employee. The Department of Transportation launches a formal investigation into the airline's passenger treatment practices, examining years of complaint records that were previously ignored or inadequately addressed. Other discrimination complaints, buried in corporate files and forgotten by management, suddenly resurface and demand immediate attention. Sarah tries desperately to find another position in the aviation industry, but the video footage follows her everywhere like a digital scarlet letter. Airlines cannot risk hiring someone who became a national symbol of passenger discrimination, especially when federal oversight is intensifying. Her professional reputation is destroyed beyond any possibility of repair. More personally devastating, friends and family members who saw the viral videos struggle to reconcile the Sarah they thought they knew with the person they witnessed abusing a teenager. Some relationships survive the revelation, but many don't. She's forced to move to a different city, change careers entirely, and rebuild her entire life from scratch while carrying the permanent burden of public shame. The airline faces congressional hearings where Senator Williams uses Zoe's experience as the centerpiece for broader reform legislation that will affect the entire industry. Zoe's careful documentation provides the evidentiary foundation for new regulations. Her policy recommendations become legislative language, and her research methodology becomes the template for future oversight investigations. 4 months later, the Passenger Dignity and Protection Act passes the Senate with overwhelming bipartisan support. The legislation establishes clear protocols for discrimination complaints, creates federal oversight of airline customer service practices, mandates regular civil rights training for all airline employees, and provides meaningful financial penalties for violations. Zoe's summer internship research, combined with her first-hand experience of discrimination, becomes the gold standard for the new enforcement mechanisms. Her documentation methods are taught in civil rights law schools and advocacy workshops. Her calm, strategic response to provocation becomes a model case study for handling discrimination while building legal cases. Sarah Martinez, meanwhile, works at a small-town insurance office in a different state, her aviation career now just a painful memory. She's become a cautionary tale in business schools about how personal bias can destroy both individual careers and corporate reputations, referenced in diversity training programs as an example of what happens when discrimination goes unchecked. The teenager she tried to humiliate has helped transform an entire industry, while Sarah's name will forever be associated with the kind of bias that the new legislation was designed to eliminate. 8 months after the flight, Zoe Williams testifies before the Senate Transportation Committee as their youngest ever expert witness on aviation civil rights enforcement. The hearing room is packed with reporters, civil rights advocates, airline industry representatives, and policy experts who understand they're witnessing a pivotal moment in passenger rights history. Zoe's testimony is methodical, data-driven, and devastatingly comprehensive. She presents a complete analysis of discrimination patterns in the airline industry, using her personal experience as one carefully documented example among hundreds of cases her research has uncovered. Her recommendations are specific, achievable, and politically sophisticated, designed to attract bipartisan support and industry cooperation rather than resistance. Discrimination in aviation isn't just about individual bad actors like the flight attendant who targeted me. Zoe explains to the committee with the confidence of someone who has spent months mastering complex policy details. It's about systems that fail to prevent bias, investigate complaints thoroughly, or hold airlines meaningfully accountable for passenger treatment. We need structural change with teeth, not just individual punishment. The Passenger Dignity and Protection Act becomes law 10 months after Zoe's flight, signed by the president in a Rose Garden ceremony that Zoe attends alongside congressional sponsors, civil rights leaders, and transportation policy experts. The legislation creates the most comprehensive passenger rights framework in aviation history, with real enforcement mechanisms, meaningful financial penalties, and federal oversight that actually has power to create change. Airlines across the country implement new training programs based directly on Zoe's research and policy recommendations. Customer service protocols are completely rewritten to emphasize equal treatment standards and bias recognition. Complaint processes are standardized, federally monitored, and designed to actually resolve problems rather than simply documenting them. The changes affect millions of passengers who will never know Zoe's name, but will benefit from her experience and advocacy. Zoe herself becomes a sought-after speaker on civil rights strategy, documentation techniques, and effective advocacy methods. She addresses university students, teaches workshops for civil rights organizations, mentors young activists on strategic response to discrimination, and consults with policymakers on consumer protection legislation. Her approach, calm preparation, thorough documentation, strategic rather than emotional response, becomes known as the Zoe method in activist and legal circles. She establishes the Zoe Williams Passenger Rights Fellowship, funded by speaking fees and donations from supporters who followed her story. The fellowship provides resources for law students researching transportation discrimination, consumer protection enforcement, and civil rights policy development. The airline industry changes in ways both immediately visible and subtly systemic. Flight attendants receive enhanced training on unconscious bias, recognition, and passenger rights protection. Airline policies are rewritten to emphasize equal treatment standards with specific examples and clear consequences. Federal oversight mechanisms ensure that discrimination complaints are properly investigated, resolved, and tracked for pattern identification. Sarah Martinez, now working in an entirely different field 3 states away, occasionally sees news coverage of Zoe's continued advocacy work and policy successes. She understands, with the painful clarity that comes from devastating personal consequence, that her actions on that flight revealed something about herself that she had never wanted to acknowledge. The experience forces her to confront biases she had carried unconsciously for years, assumptions she had never examined, privileges she had never recognized. Zoe graduates high school with early admission to Harvard Law School, where she plans to study transportation law, civil rights enforcement, and federal regulatory policy. Her high school graduation speech, delivered to a packed auditorium of family, friends, and media representatives, focuses on the transformative power of strategic preparation and the importance of fighting for systemic change rather than personal revenge. When we experience discrimination, we face a fundamental choice. Zoe tells her fellow graduates and the audience beyond. We can respond with anger, which feels satisfying in the moment, but usually doesn't create lasting change. Or we can respond with strategy, documentation, and determination to make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else. Anger is personal, but strategy is transformational. Senator Williams watches from the front row, proud of the young woman who turned a moment of injustice into a catalyst for comprehensive federal reform. Zoe's response to discrimination has become a masterclass in strategic activism, the transformative power of preparation and documentation, and principled resistance that achieves concrete policy victories. The teenager who remained calm under pressure and documented everything has grown into a civil rights advocate whose influence will be felt for generations, whose name will be attached to legislation that protects millions of travelers, and whose methodology will be taught to future activists facing discrimination in all its forms. Zoe Williams proved that age, background, or circumstances don't determine your power to create meaningful change in the world. You don't need to be a senator's daughter to demand respect, document discrimination systematically, or fight effectively for justice. Your smartphone is your civil rights tool. Your voice carries power. Your experience matters more than you know. Every single time you witness discrimination against yourself or others, you face a choice that defines who you are. You can look away and let injustice continue, or you can speak up and become part of the solution. You can accept unfair treatment as inevitable, or you can document it and demand accountability. You can let bias go unchallenged, or you can insist on better from every institution that serves you. The next time you see someone being treated differently because of who they are, remember Zoe's example. Stay calm, gather evidence, support the victim, and hold wrongdoers accountable through proper channels. Your intervention might prevent the next incident. Your documentation might provide the evidence needed for justice. Your courage might inspire others to act. Know your rights as a passenger, as a consumer, as a human being deserving of dignity. Learn the laws that protect you. Understand the mechanisms available for reporting discrimination and demanding accountability from those in power. Use them when necessary, and teach others to use them confidently. Document your dignity. Demand your respect. Drive the change that future generations will thank you for. The person sitting next to you might just be the next Zoe Williams, ready to transform your moment of courage into systemic reform that helps people you'll never meet. Because sometimes the most powerful response to injustice isn't explosive anger, it's strategic preparation and principled action. And sometimes the best revenge is simply making sure discrimination never happens to anyone else ever again.